not-for-profit, independent environmental research organization. Our team of scientists is investigating the natural systems that we all depend on. Their expertise includes fresh water, air pollution, forest health, invasive species, alternative energy, and the ecological dimensions of infectious disease. Right now, you're sitting in seats in our wonderful auditorium as part of our public lecture series. We've been so pleased to offer these monthly for the past few years. And our primary goal is just to offer inspiring and educational environmental programming to you all. Tonight, our lecture features birdsong expert Donald Kroodsma, and we're so happy that we're presenting in collaboration with the Waterman Bird Club. I want to let everyone know, before we proceed, that we have a few upcoming events of note. Next week at 7 p.m., same place, we're going to be featuring The Last Mountain, which is a documentary film about mountaintop removal. We're going to have the producer here for Q&A, as well as our Bill Fleshman, who has done scientific research on the topic, so it should be a great evening. And in June, on the 10th, at 7 p.m. again, we're going to be having another public lecture on the Marcellus Shale, and what that would mean for the state. So if you want to check out our information table out there and mark your calendars. And we're so thrilled that there's been such a great turnout for this event. We have to tell people though that we can't have folks sitting on the stairs, and I hate to be the bearer of that. So there is overflow in the lobby, and it's unfortunately we have fire marshal regulations that we have to follow. So I apologize for that. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Vinnie Chase of the Bird Club, and she's going to introduce Don. I might have chairs and for folks to sit in front of the railing back there, folks can hand have them on the stairs. Hi, I'm with Waterman Bird Club, and I am the program director, and we've been trying to get hooked up with Don for quite a while. It's pretty hard to capture. I want to thank Carrie for letting us co-host.
Can't hear you.
Need a microphone, please. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. I don't usually have that problem. Okay, I wanted to thank Carrie for letting us co-host with them, and that's why you have such nice seats. You wouldn't have had them if it was just us. Our calendars have been marked for months. The long-awaited evening is finally here, and so is Don. With all his knowledge about bird songs, he has traveled from Massachusetts to spend the evening with us and will tell us what he has learned through his years of research. Now, a lot of you know about tomorrow morning. Don is leading a walk at 5 a.m. because that's when the birds get up. Only 20 people can go. We have 2 empty spaces, which you can, if there's 2 other people that would like to come, you can tell me. There's no charge. But at 7:30, if you are up and you want to come over, you are free. Anybody that wants to come can come and hear what we heard, and he will discuss what he's found out about the birds around here. Right up here. Arch, and then walk the path to the other building. There'll be signs, you'll find it, no problem. And I want to just tell you one thing about Don. I think he's very, we know he's very smart. But the other thing is, some people say how they want to live their life and they don't do it. Well, at least he's had a job that he liked and has enjoyed doing it, and now he can share it with us. And he told me one thing that he decided when he retired, as you see, he's really not retired, but he's supposed to be, that he would have 2 springs in his life, the rest of his life. So we're lucky to get him when we are in spring, because as soon as it turns spring south in South America, that's where he goes. So with all that, here's Don.
Oh, it's a joy to be here. Back in 1972, way back then, when Carrie and Rockefeller were setting down roots in Millbrook, I found myself over at Rockefeller until 1980. So for 8 years, Millbrook was my home, and the Waterman Bird Club was an extraordinary source of information about birds everywhere around here. It's also, I also smile all over inside to meet just among bird lovers. Every other group meeting that I've had in this room has been with birdsong scientists. And they are passionate about their science. They're passionate about their careers, often themselves, but all too often they don't have this sheer passion for birds that I can just see in your faces as I just look around. So I have a very simple goal for tonight, and that goal is summarized in this slide. It seems to me that, well, I don't know how to introduce this topic really, because I don't want to offend anybody, but it seems that the major game in town when it comes to birds is bird identification. And I just got an advanced guide to bird ID on my desk, and I read through it quickly. I read the introduction, went right to the chapter on song, and I just felt deflated and sad. And there's another big, dare I say, essential companion that you must have if you're going to be birding. But when you go and read the print, it says, oh, the goal is to pin the label on the bird, and presumably as quickly as possible, with as few clues as possible, so you can move on to the next bird. And to me, that's just very sad. To me, a human analogy would be something like this. Somebody calls you up on the telephone. If you have an old-fashioned telephone, you pick up the receiver, you listen to that first snippet of voice, and as soon as you identify the person, you slam the receiver. We don't do that with our human friends, because what we want to know is what's on their mind. That's what we value. Maybe we value looking at them too, but we want to know what's here. That's what makes our friends. And for me, it's the same with birds. Okay, maybe they're not your best friends, but I want to hear what they have to say, because listening to what they say is a window on their mind. And to me, you don't even have to identify the bird to try to understand what that particular bird is doing at that particular instant. Sure, knowing the name of it is wonderful. But when I come back from a place like Costa Rica, for example, I'll have a trip list of 10 birds. Maybe 8 of them got in the way while I was really focusing on trying to understand 2 of them. So it's a totally different approach that I would encourage many of you to consider. Some of you probably already a little bit disgruntled with this rapid ID game and chasing all over creation, maybe Dutchess County, and getting that list for the day. Well, there's an alternative. It's just pulling up a chair and sitting underneath one individual for as long as you can. Because not only is every species interesting in its own way, they all do something different, but every individual of that species is interesting every time you encounter it, because he or she, I gravitate towards he because it's mostly the he's who are doing the singing, he has something different that he's saying and using his songs in a different way every time you encounter him. And just being able to read what he's doing and try to understand and crawl inside his mind and appreciate him, to me, that is exciting. Far beyond pinning a label on the bird and racing on to the next bird. The roadmap for tonight. I would like to propose that we look at some things called sonograms. These are really musical scores for birdsong. And I really do hear with my eyes. I see these voice imprints as these birds sing. And then we'll look at a very common bird, song sparrow around here, and try to learn how to listen to this very common bird. Talk about a few miscellaneous species, miscellaneous ideas about bird song, and then go to a couple of thrushes, hermit thrush, eventually, maybe down to the wood thrush. How songbirds learn to sing? Well, they learn to sing very much like we learn to speak. Blue jays, wonderful opportunities for listening. Winter wren, we'll probably get to about here. Unless we may reach a point where if some of you want to stay, we'll keep on, but we'll stand up and stretch. We'll see where it goes. So first thing, I have to, how many of you already just love sonograms? I love the word sonogram. You love it. All right. How many of you already have a distaste for these things? Be honest. Yes, okay, you're honest. And the rest of you, I just need to win over, don't I? Okay. They really are quite simple, trust me. You think of musical scores. Many of you are musicians, So you have time. These are drums of 3 different woodpeckers. So here you have time on the horizontal axis. You're familiar with that. This is just 1 second. 0 to 1 second. 0 to 3 seconds all the way across. Highest note on the piano is 4,000 roughly cycles per second. That little string in there vibrates 4,000 times each second when you hammer it. So the frequency scale here is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4,000 cycles per second. That's just the piano range. Then it gets a little bit different. This woodpecker slamming its bill into a tree, it's a noisy sound by definition. A knock, a gunshot, a door slam. It's a broad range of frequencies happening instantaneously in any given instant in time, so that hairy downy woodpecker slams its bill into the trunk once and it creates this noise. Hairy woodpecker, the same thing over here, and the yellow-bellied sapsucker. Your eyes already tell you, if you don't know the downy and the hairy woodpecker drum, your eyes already tell you what you're going to hear, don't they? You start to hear with your eyes. Notice how much more rapidly this hairy woodpecker drums than does the downy. And then the yellow-bellied sapsucker. I have one drumming on the metal gutter right outside my office window. And these birds seek these resonating chambers. I think every bird must know where it is singing and somehow has a special resonance from that particular perch that it likes. So this yellow-bellied sapsucker has these 3 raps at the beginning, and then you see these double raps. But you'll hear only this first loud one. See how much darker it is in the second one? And so a series of these double raps, and then some well spaced out at the end. So I'll play this once, and just get a feeling for the rhythm and what a song. I think of these as mechanical songs. Get a feeling for what they sound like. One more time. If we played this backwards, you would actually hear that faint little rap at the beginning and at the end of it. I could do that later, but it would take time, and already you sense I'm hustling because there's a lot here, and how can I throw anybody out? So with that one slide of those sonograms, already I think, even though you've never seen a sonogram before, you have a hunch what this is going to sound like. So many of you know the white-throated. How many know white-throated sparrow songs? Yeah, it's hard not to know, isn't it? So even if you didn't, though, you would see these nice, pure tones held at 5,000 cycles per second, another long one, a lower long one, and then these triplets on the end. The standard mnemonic is poor, poor Sam, Peabody, Peabody, Peabody. I prefer, oh, oh, sweet Canada, 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 because you're north. Then the yellowthroat, a common warbler around here. The mnemonic is witchetty, witchetty, witchetty. And if you look at the sonogram, you can see a faint witchetty to begin. There's another syllable, another, and another witchetty. So it gets louder. But with a yellowthroat, the song starts to happen so fast that you can't hear the details. And this, to me, is one of the things that I find most fascinating. That these birds can hear far better in time than we can. So we really have to take a song and stretch it out and slow it down, maybe 4 or more times, so that we hear the same kind of details that the birds are hearing. So you go out and listen to a bird and you say, well, boy, that song is just a blur. Well, you have to add to my pathetic ears to that. Because to the bird, it's probably hearing every little detail. And the best evidence is that these birds imitate. They learn the details of their songs from each other. If they couldn't hear those details, they couldn't imitate them. So I will play this song at normal speed, but then this one at full speed, half speed, and by the time I get down to quarter speed, you'll hear each one of these little notes. And by the time you get to quarter speed, just imagine yourself as a yellowthroat, common yellowthroat, with a black mask, or a female without the black, because you're getting down to a slow enough pace where I think you are starting to hear the details that the bird itself is hearing. Now half. Quarter. I should play that again, but we'll hear some more. Let's go on to a song sparrow. When I was based at Rockefeller, I banded hundreds of song sparrows up and down the stream here at Cary. Song sparrows, I spent so much time with them. They're such a common bird, and most people can say, oh, there's a song sparrow, and then not listen beyond that. But song sparrows offer wonderful listening opportunities because each male has a number of different songs, up to 8 to 10 different songs. And some people despair as soon as they hear that because they say, do I have to learn all 8 to identify it as a song sparrow? No, all song sparrow songs sort of sound alike. They have the same kind of rhythm and quality. But the fact that he has 8 means that every song that he sings, he has a choice. Not necessarily a conscious choice, but every song he sings, he has a choice. Do I repeat the same song that I just sang, or do I go to another song? And if I go to another song, which of those other 7 or 8 or 9 songs do I go to? Does it depend on what just happened out here with another male singing? So you have all these listening opportunities, not just for that male you're concentrating on, but everything else that's going on around. So we're going to focus just on one song sparrow. This bird has 8 different songs. And just looking at this beautiful, exquisite sonogram, any of you convinced yet sonograms are beautiful? All right, thank you. So you see this. This is not a pure whistle like these, is it? These are nice, beautiful tonal notes. Look at this one's longer and it becomes gradually shorter. You see that, you'll hear it then. If you see it, you'll listen for it. Little buzzy notes here at the beginning, a broadband buzzy note. These are so high and fast you probably won't even hear them. This little low buzz on the end, and this tiny little note, you will even hear that if you're conscious of it. Once you see it and listen for it, it'll be there. So here's the test. I'm a retired professor. I still know how to give tests, though. So here's the test. This bird, a song sparrow, routinely sings one of his songs many times before switching to another. And so if you listen to a song sparrow, you are almost blown away when he switches to that next song, if you're listening and ready for it. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to play this song sparrow song a couple of times, and at some point, he's going to switch to a new song. And when he switches, I bet most of you will hear it. And when you hear it, if you hear it, of course you'll hear it, raise your hand or scream something. Anything. Anything goes. Hear those 3 buzzy notes, this tiny note, the broad buzz, the nice series of whistles, and the low buzz. Same one. There it is, isn't it? And you knew instantly that it wasn't this buzzy note, but something quite different down here, starting this lower song. And song sparrows listening to these songs in the neighborhood, they know instantly, too, when the male has switched songs, because each song sparrow may have 5 neighbors, and each of his neighbors have maybe 10 songs. That song sparrow has in his memory all those 50 songs of these song sparrows around him. And he knows instantly if he's hearing a song from this location that it better be from the bird that he knows as his neighbor over there. And if it's the wrong song coming from there, well, he knows it and all hell breaks loose because there's a battle to be done over in that territory boundary to reestablish it. Let me show you the other 6. Here are 2 more. And to my eyes, they are just beautiful. All these songs are somehow encoded in his brain, secure, crystallized. He sings them with confidence and knowledge. And here are all 8. I'm going to do what a song sparrow would never do and play just one example of each of these 8 songs. Down the first column, then down the second column. and just get a feeling for the variety of these songs. And then all these little speakers lined up around the right-hand side. Some of these play single notes, and I'll just see how good your ears are. See if you can identify which song the notes are. I'll play a couple of full songs too. That's the one you heard first. Here comes the next one. Song C is next. That's my favorite, I think. Hard to hear these. Our ears are challenged up here. Here comes one of the 8. Which one is it? F. Boy, you're good. I'll play it one more time. Okay, now here's the fun. If you're hooked, you hear song sparrows everywhere. You probably have one outside the kitchen window. If you start to just take little scribbled notes and make your own sonograms, whatever makes sense to you, before you know it, you will recognize all 8 to 10 songs of this particular individual song sparrow. And this, you will obsess over this bird every time you sing. Is it song 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 8? But then you start to ask questions. Oh, that's song 2. You say, I know that one. I wonder what's coming next. Last time, he tends to sing song 4 after number 2. And what comes next? How many times is he going to sing each one of these songs? Does he favor some over others? All these kinds of simple little questions that a curious naturalist can't help but ask. And you can play with this song sparrow to your mind's content all summer long. Want to try another song? D. Wow, it is. I should warn you, sometimes there might be 5 here, sometimes 3, so you can't just count. You want to try a single note? Here you go. All right, just think out loud about it. It wasn't a nice pure tone, was it? It was kind of buzzy. Play it one more time. A. I'm playing it several times in a row. It is A. Now this is more of a challenge. I'll try another one. A single pure tone. There it is, right there. All right, you got some work to do, but you have all summer. Let me just talk about a few birds in general, just some miscellaneous ideas before we go to, I think, the hermit thrush is next. So these songbirds, I emphasize, they learn to sing like we learn to speak. I'm going to illustrate that a little later because I can say that till I'm blue in the face and it really won't strike you what these songbirds are capable of doing. They babble just like we babble when we're young and so on. And you might ask then a simple question as I did as a graduate student before coming to Millbrook, before 1972. And my simple question was, well, if they learn their songs, from whom do they learn their songs? I banded hundreds of birds, putting little plastic leg bands on and following them around and documenting that they learned their songs, these are the males, learned their songs not from their father, but from the males where this young bird set up his territory, maybe up to a mile away, because the songs change from one place to another over a mile in dialect fashion, just as humans have dialects. So these birds have songs in them that are just like their neighbors so that they can play some important singing games with them by matching them with exactly the same songs. Some of the most common birds offer some of the most fascinating listening. Black-capped chickadees, I bet somebody can whistle. If you know how to whistle black-capped chickadees, don't go for it. That was a good one. So the whistle starts high. It's a... Now my tone's all wrong, the pitch difference is all wrong, but the essential part is you hear a high whistle and then a low whistle that's broken into two. Not that markedly. But you have to be close enough or the reverberation and echo will destroy that little silent spot. I should show you a picture of that song and you would forever remember it. But I like to think of it as, hey, sweetie. Some people say it's hamburger, or I don't know what the other demonics are. But once you know that little break is in that second whistle, you listen for it everywhere you go. Every chickadee you ever listen to, you will say, ah, black-capped chickadee. Yep, he's got that little break in that second whistle. But the fascinating part is that there are all kinds of mysteries with this most common bird, because he'll take that song and he'll shift it through a range of frequencies. And then his neighbor's doing the same thing. So you have a neighborhood of black-capped chickadees, especially during the dawn chorus, all singing this Hey Sweetie song, but all on different pitches and playing games with each other. And the functions of these games, almost certainly they have to do with males interacting with each other and trying to establish some kind of a dominance hierarchy, and the females are listening and making mating decisions based on what they hear the males doing. I say almost certainly. That's the hunch of a number of people. I'll elaborate more on that a little later. So mysteries galore in the most common of birds. And if you ever get to Martha's Vineyard, the only thing to do there that I know of is to listen to chickadees. They are totally different from anything you'll hear anywhere else in the world. And there are 3 different dialects on Martha's Vineyard. And you find only this Hey Sweetie dialect all the way from Cape Cod all the way across the country to British Columbia. And those dialects, Martha's Vineyard, good. Got to go on. So songbirds learn to sing, but here's an oddball. Here's the sedge wren. Occasionally they nest here in Dutchess County. Yes, occasionally. Not too often. Marsh wren's far more common. But what they are semi-nomadic, so that they breed in one place early in the season, and they may pick up and breed at another place later in the season. Well, they don't set up shop near the same neighbors for their entire season or their entire life. They're always talking to different birds at different parts of the season, and maybe the next season in 2 totally different places again. So they don't spend a lot of time imitating the songs of their neighbors. They just make their songs up. It's like snowflakes. Every time you see a snowflake, you'll notice a snowflake's got 6 sides, got all these characteristics. Well, all these songs of sedge wrens have these certain characteristics that instantly you can say sedge wren when you hear one, but no 2 are alike. And by not imitating and by having just this generalized song and having lost this ability to imitate precisely, they can communicate with their neighbors. So you have all these different strategies for singing, and probably no 2 species alike. 3-wild bellbird, a bird I have been working with in Costa Rica some. They're close relatives of flycatchers. Well, flycatchers do not learn to sing. That's a pretty bold statement, and there might be some subtle variations there. But in general, an eastern phoebe, a willow flycatcher, alder flycatcher, they don't learn their songs. Their songs are somehow encoded directly into the DNA. Well, here's a flycatcher relative that does learn its songs. So it has recently, in evolutionary time, acquired this ability to learn songs. So you can see how some bird songologist who's interested in all these different strategies for singing and how one acquires one's songs can get pretty excited about trying to figure out the patterns of all these different kinds of behaviors. Warblers. Many warblers have 2 different categories of songs. You probably know the chestnut-sided, some of you know the chestnut-sided warbler has a song that is in the field guides. It's please, please, please to meet you. It's a very emphatic ending. Well, they have this other song that they do during the dawn chorus. And my hunch is, and the hunch of many people who have studied these warblers, that these are male-male interaction kinds of songs. They're aggressive kinds of songs. But probably the most attentive listeners are the females, because they're trying to understand the patterns among these males so that they can make rather important decisions about who's going to be the father of their offspring. The most boring of birds, chipping sparrows. I hope at 5 a.m. we have a little chipping sparrow war going on outside here. At dawn, a student, Juan Chuen, who is over at Rockefeller, worked with me up in Amherst, and he spent many mornings out studying these chipping sparrows. And what goes on at dawn is, to me, one of the most fascinating things among all birds. During the day, they sing these long songs up in the treetops, they might go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At dawn, 5 a.m., unless it's too early in the season, I bet these chipping sparrows will be on the ground, and there'll be at least 2 males, there could be 3 or 4 males that have left their territory, and they sing in this little arena, spitting songs back and forth at one another in the most rapid fashion you can imagine. And to me, it looks exactly like a lek. Those of you who know birds and think of grouse and what are those birds of paradise, you think of all these males that congregate in a given location and do this all season long. Well, this is a miniature lek of these chipping sparrows at dawn. What is the function? I bet she knows. I bet she's listening. Let's go to the hermit thrush. You can read the quote. Not all that common right around here, but I think you get a little higher in elevation. You get up in the Catskills. And when I asked the Waterman Club for, what birds would you like to hear about, I just got thrush at the top. Just thrush. Well, there are hermit thrushes and wood thrushes and veeries, and we should do every one of them, but we don't have time. We'll do some tomorrow. So I'm going to take the 9 songs of this hermit thrush, and I'm going to spend a little more time on this hermit thrush than probably the other species. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One is, they're just cool songs, I guess. That's the main reason. But a couple of other reasons. It was a few years ago when I asked myself, well, why is it that Matthews would say this about the hermit thrush? Why would Burroughs say something like, I'd have to get the quote out of my book, but he says, religion, music, nothing compared to listening to a hermit thrush at dusk. So what is so special about hermit thrushes? Well, I went to the literature and tried to find out, and nobody knew. Nobody had actually worked on this creature. And so in a half day's time, I learned what I'm going to tell you here. Well, then I did a little extra in another year, but most of what I'm going to tell you I learned in a half day's time. And I don't tell you that because I'm special, but tell you that because there's so many birds out there that we know so little about. And if any one of you became fascinated with any one of these birds, I'm sure you would learn something new. And it's that kind of draw that these birds have. And so, although we're going to be talking about hermit thrushes, I'm going to tell you what I think is really special about them. I think you could go to any species under the sun and start talking about it, and they would not be doing anything any more special than what this bird is doing. So onward. 9 different songs this bird had, and I'm going to arrange these 9 into 5 slides. And if we ask this hermit thrush, this particular individual, I'm not saying all hermit thrushes do this, but if we ask this one individual, if you were going to arrange your 9 songs, how would you do it? I think he'd do it exactly how I'm going to show you. He has 2 songs, and a hermit thrush song begins with a nice short whistle here, maybe a third of a second long, and then it goes to all this fluty stuff, and this is really high. It's going to challenge some hearing. But I have 2 songs that have almost identical frequencies here, and I'm going to play them, but again, apologies to the hermit thrush itself, because you will never hear a hermit thrush do what I'm doing now, playing these 2 very similar songs back to back. It's up there. Look at the next 2. See, we've dropped down. I'm going to play these also. Two more. Notice we're going to drop down again. There they are. Here's another one way down here, and then 2 more way down there. I'm going to go up here because I want to play these at a couple of different speeds. So first at full speed. Half speed. quarter speed. Now we're getting down to the kind of detail that I'm convinced the hermit thrushes can hear. And why not go one more? So I have all 9 here, and I've arranged them in the same fashion that I showed you in the previous 5 slides. The 2 songs of the highest frequency are up here at the top, A and F. The 2 songs of the lowest, way down here, C and E. See that whistle at the beginning? It's right here at 2,000 cycles per second. And then the ones in between. What I'm going to do next is just erase these sonograms and just leave you with the structure, because I want to show you. Well, let me ask you first. Let me think about this first. So this hermit thrush has these 9 different songs. He has a choice as to how he's going to sing these songs. And the choice probably is not his alone, because evolutionarily it's been dictated to him by some forces that he sing in a certain way. But over evolutionary time, he certainly has choices. Like that song sparrow. Does he sing the same song over and over and over before he starts a new song series? Or does he choose the next song at random? Or does he have a very regular way that he goes through these series of songs? Maybe he starts high and goes through all of them down to low. I asked a human musician what this hermit thrush should do. He said that's what he should do. He should start high and go low, and then go up the other side and just have this beautiful series. But what this hermit thrush does is something I think is really special. He knows these songs and their characteristics so well. He knows the relative similarities and differences of these songs, so that when he sings a song, he chooses the next song so that it's not just different, but it's especially different. So he sings here, and then does he sing the next one that's just closest? No, he leaps up to another song way up here, and he falls way down to another. So these giant leaps from one song to the next as you hear him work through his repertoire. Let me show you, I hesitate showing you these next few slides, but I'm going to do it anyway because we need to look at more graphs. So these letters, they really mean nothing except that it is one typical sequence that this bird went through his repertoire. Notice from A to B to C, back up to D, E, F, G, H, I. And the only single step in there from one level to the next was G to H. All the other steps were leaps of 2 or 3 or 4 levels. I got to show you now. I got to talk about it now that we looked at it, don't I? If you start to draw in his favorite sequences, look what he does. Here's some symmetry. I'll show you all the symmetry first. When he sings A, he'll sing either B or G next. And when he sings the most similar song to A, the one that's way up here in this high frequency, he also goes down to B or G. And it's the same pattern down here. And from the lower 2, his favorites are to go up to D and H. Already he's telling you that in his mind, these songs on the same level are somewhat equivalent to each other. I'll throw in the asymmetries and then just show you the whole thing, because I love looking at this. And what scientists do is they collect numbers. Science is the art of collecting interesting numbers, it's been said. And I like that. You think in terms of numbers. What's the probability that this would have happened or that would have happened? And when you start to ask questions and think about the probabilities of this bird singing in a particular way, it turns out that if this bird chooses his next song at random, about half of the songs that he chooses next will be straight across, going from B to G, or taking a single step. So what I did, I coded all of the steps that were a step of 0 straight across or a step of 1 in black. And I coded all the steps of 2 or 3 and 4 in red. How many black ones do you see? Yeah, that's easy, isn't it? How many blue and red? Don't bother counting. There's just a whole gob more. So all the color code tells you is that, wow, all this red and blue tells you, compared to that single black one, is that he favors choosing the next song, so he has to take a giant leap in one direction or another to give that next song. There's another way of looking at this that I like too. I should ask you first, what's better than a singing hermit thrush? Two singing hermit thrushes. It gets even better. So here is bird one of two birds. And over a series of 80 songs between two birds, this bird sang only 40, the other bird sang the other 40. We're looking at one bird at a time. Look, here's the frequency of that introductory whistle. Look what he does. This is a sharp seesaw, jagged edge graph. He's just bouncing from low to high, nothing in between. Well, what if you rearrange these songs at random? What does it look like? Oh, he gets stuck on low ones for a while. He might sing the same one back to back. You get stuck on some high ones. You're up here high for a while. Far less interesting than what the bird actually does. So he doesn't sing at random. Here's the second bird, also very jagged. And if you look at if you just rearrange these songs at random, no, look at he gets stuck on low frequencies for a while, stuck on high ones. Nothing like what makes hermit thrushes so exciting when you listen to them. You take two birds, and I had to ask this question. When you have one hermit thrush, and he does what he did, I said, that's it. I'm not touching hermit thrushes again. I don't dare go back for fear that the second one disappoints me. But I said, well, all right, you got two hermit thrushes. And I had the perfect setup. These birds were saying I scouted them out for a couple days beforehand. I'd arrive at 4 in the morning, and I'd set up a microphone to each one. And then I'd go back and analyze it. And for 80 songs, 40 from each bird, there was this perfect alternating in the morning. And they were close to each other. And you could tell that they were listening to each other and countering each other. And when you look at the pattern here is, I think this is the first bird. Look what the second bird does. After he hears this from the first bird, he jumps way up. And here's the first bird, second bird, first, second. You see the jagged alternating back and forth of these two hermit thrushes as they're singing. What happens if you arrange these songs in random order? Far less interesting. There is some kind of effort on the part of these birds. I won't say it's a conscious effort, but there is some effort to do something especially different from what the neighbor has just done. And here's the obvious question. But a good half of you know it's the wrong question. I like to think of the female songbird as the silent composer of everything that the male does. She doesn't sing, and when I tell that to many of my female friends who don't know a lot about birds, there's this great look of disappointment on their faces. And then you have these philosopher musicians that I've been arguing with who say, well, birds sing for joy. And I said, well, what about that poor female? Why is she so joyless? And why is the male so joyful only during the breeding season? But he is singing, those of us who study birdsong are 99% convinced, to impress her. Birds defend territories during the non-breeding season, but very few of them use songs to defend those territories. They use calls often to defend those territories. They don't need a song to defend a territory. So the songs are probably all about males trying to jockey in position with each other, but having the females listen to monitor who is the top dog in this singing arena. And the reason that's so interesting and so important wasn't really realized until, I think it was the 1970s, maybe the 80s. Someone was going to try to do some population control on red-winged blackbirds. And they thought, well, let's vasectomize the males. And so we'll have all these females laying infertile eggs, but lo and behold, the females in the territories of these infertile males were laying fertile eggs. And from there, it just got better and better and better. And all the DNA fingerprinting shows that these females are making fascinating choices as to who's going to be the father of their offspring. They don't. An indigo bunting, for example, I don't think there are data on hermit thrushes, but an indigo bunting, about half of the babies in the nest you can predict will be fathered by males who are not the social partner helping to rear the babies, but by other males in the neighborhood. And with chickadees, chickadees have these winter dominance hierarchies, so I think you can understand what a female chickadee low in the dominance hierarchy might be thinking. And I use that word thinking. I would be booed out of some scientific organizations for using the word thinking. And I was chastised some years ago by a group of psychologists saying that birds don't have minds. They have brains and they have behaviors, but they don't have minds. Having retired 7 years ago from university and academics, I can tell you that birds have minds. That's just clear. So these chickadees, they have a dominance hierarchy during the winter. You have the top alpha pair, and you have the alpha beta, way down here, this pair down here, the fourth, and maybe there are 8 birds in this flock. Well, the pair down at the bottom, that female down there knows the hierarchy of males. Okay, come during the breeding season, the flock breaks up, and each pair goes to its individual territory. Well, so the female low in the hierarchy mated with the male, or mated is probably not quite the word, paired. More proper. Paired with the male lowest in the hierarchy. Do a little bit of anthropomorphizing here. You are that female. You're paired with the fourth male down. The top male is next door. He has proven himself in all kinds of ways. He's dominant during the winter. He's probably older. He's probably survived. He probably has other characteristics that you would want your offspring to have. What are you going to do? Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? So which females among chickadees are going to be the ones with babies fathered by males next door? Probably not the alpha females, probably those females down below. And I think I don't know whether the data to support that or not, but there are data to support the fact that the female low in the hierarchy makes more visits to copulate with the older males on the other territory. But we like a lot better data. But it all makes sense. So she chooses which male is going to be the father of her offspring for these hermit thrushes. The male offspring will have the characteristics of the male, the singing characteristics of the male she's chosen, and so on. So you see the evolutionary pattern developing where the female is really in charge, and she has dictated over evolutionary time how a male is going to sing and how he interacts with his neighbors, because she chooses accordingly. And the genes of the males in the next generation will depend on what choice she made. And the females will make the choices likely that she did, and so on and so on. So I've said these songbirds learn to sing like we learn to speak. I have to illustrate that. Here's my daughter when she was about 18 months old. She's not yet embarrassed. She's 40-some years old now. The babbling that songbirds do and humans do, I'm going to illustrate in the next couple of slides. Here's the babbling from my daughter. And we all went through this, every one of us, but you have to really hear this to believe it. She's sitting in a high chair. The little piggy went to market. We read about dogs. There's a cat in the corner. Every one of you did this. All songbirds do the very same thing as they are practicing what they have to sing. Here's a Buick's wren. You see a band on the left leg of this adult and the youngsters here in the nest. Here are two examples of adult songs of a Buick's wren. Buick's wrens used to occur around here, but they're now extinct, I think, except for maybe one bird that shows up occasionally in Kentucky. But I think they're largely extinct, sadly, east of the Mississippi. Sharp, beautiful songs. Look at these two examples of this one Buick's wren Look how sharp, look how consistently he can repeat these notes and these notes on the end. There's absolute confidence. He's worked on these songs until he's gotten them just right. And if they're a little wrong, what's she going to say? Yeah? I want the other guy over there. And it might say something about his health, it might say something about his age, but there are clues in the song that she is no doubt attentive to and on which she bases some of her decisions. So I'm going to play these two songs. I didn't have to play you any English. You all know what adult English sounds like, so you can put that babbling into context. But I need to play you these two songs just so you can put the babbling of this young wren that I'm going to show you next into context. Sharp, crisp, confident. But then you look at what a young bird does. And here are only 4 seconds in a long, continuous, rambling series of amorphous, babbling sounds that I captured from this one young bird. And I'll play it, but you won't hear any of that confidence that that older bird had. And if we do the quick comparison, here's one of those songs of the adult, and then here's just a brief section of what that young bird was doing. Look, he has the right elements here. B. Here's B over here. Here's A. Here's A. He has them reversed from what he will eventually do, and you notice how sloppy he is in here, and he's not repeating this precisely either. So these young songbirds, they go through this memorization phase. They memorize these songs, and then they practice them, and they compare what they're singing to what's stored up here in their brain. And they do this over and over and over, and eventually they get it right. And if they get it right, presumably the genes of that young male will be passed on to the next generation. Blue jays. A songbird without a song, one might think. They call raucously, they go jay, jay. Surely they're not worth listening to. Surely you just identify a blue jay and move on. No, of course you don't do that because they do some fascinating things. Blue jays learn these calls. And I should back up and say, well, what is a song? You know, we humans have to have things categorized as black and white. These birds sing, these birds don't sing. That's a song, that's a call. But really, it's all, most of it makes sense, but then there's a lot of this gray area. I'm not sure what's a song in these blue jays, but they have a fascinating series of vocalizations that I just love to listen to. And I'll give you just one example. Here is a series of 4 different kinds of calls that this one blue jay gave as he was flying away from me. I'm just going to play them once. And just hear the detail. Hear the differences. As he's flying away. One more time. What I want to do now is just share with you a brief section. You know, I think I just totally blew it. Did we listen to those Hermit Thrush songs?
No.
Why didn't somebody say something? I forgot to listen to the Hermit Thrush song. We're going to go back and listen to the Hermit Thrush songs, then we're going to come back to the Blue Jays. So what I have is just, I don't know whether it's a minute or what it is, but I'm going to play this series of Hermit Thrush songs. And this is another program. It's a program called Raven. And you can get a free copy by downloading it from Cornell and play with all the sonograms you could ever imagine. And you can play songs backwards and play them at any speed that you want, and you'll find that it's a dangerous, slippery slope, and before you know it, you've spent 40 years doing this kind of thing. I am so grateful there's all this magical software, because the equipment we used to use 40 years ago was, you can imagine, a bit more primitive. So this is this wonderful Raven program, and we're going to watch, you look at these sonograms in the PowerPoint program, I think this is almost an insult to these birds. Can we do anything to help make them come a little more alive? And I think this is the closest I can come to it here before 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So we'll listen to this Hermit Thrush song and just get a feeling for what he does, leaping about the frequency spectrum. So this all these songs are just going to scroll by this vertical line here. And so follow the frequency of this whistle as it comes in and see where the next whistle comes in. I think you'll feel these songs. You'll see, feel, and hear these songs just jumping around. That was down here. Whistles way down. That's one of the highest ones. Took 2 steps to go all the way down. He does this for half an hour. Way up there again. Mid-level, and sadly, after a minute and a half, we must stop. I should have played each one of those at half speed and backwards at quarter speed and played with them for a while, but we must move on. The blue jay. Let's listen to this blue jay. And this is a recording that I made as I was lying in bed in the morning. I'd taken the screen off the window and I had the microphone on the end of a cane pole. And this bird, this blue jay, would sleep in a hemlock outside the bedroom window. So at the appropriate time in the morning before the blue jay was awake, I'd wake up. I'd shift the microphone out on this cane pole so it was quite close to him or her sitting in this hemlock. And I could lie in bed then with headphones over my ears just listening to the blue jay world awake. And it's quite striking once you really listen to what these birds are doing. Here is one particular call that this blue jay started to give. And I can play this call over rapidly, give you a feel for it. Okay, enough of that. And if I scroll rapidly through this whole sequence, tell me when you see something different. Whoa, look at that. How different this is. I'll play this. So why did the jay do that? Why did it switch that? Well, look what's going on in the background here with some other jays that came into the yard. Much the same kind of thing. And then you scroll back, look forward. Just what happens? Look at this. He changes back. You see the lower panel becomes the upper panel. We're just snaking around here so we can see a little bit more. Eventually, he switches back to that same sound that you heard first. And it all depends on what the other jays are doing in the background. So we're going to just let this whole thing scroll by this vertical mark here and just listen to what the foreground jay is doing and then listen to what's going on in the background. Not much going on in the background. A couple of jays have invaded the yard. They're calling sharply, Jay, Jay. The bird in the hemlock outside my bedroom window is thinking. What do I do next? What do I do next? Do I do the same thing over and over that I've just been doing? No, I'm going to match them. So they're all doing the same thing now. Eventually, one of the birds in the background is going to switch to what this bird was doing first. And then the second bird in the background will switch, and then the bird in the foreground will switch back. So let's watch for it. Oh, there's one. Still J. Look, here's the background birds. They're all getting this. So when you go out and identify a blue jay, just think to yourself, that blue jay is using that particular sound at that instant for some reason. It has all kinds of choices as to what it could be using, which particular jay it uses. So you hear a blue jay, start listening to all the other jays around. Are they all doing the same thing? Who's switching first? How rapidly? Who switches at what time? And how quickly do the others switch with it? There's this whole blue jay communication game going on that you can listen to beyond identifying, beyond just saying, there's a blue jay. Oh, I was going to do wood thrushes next, but I've been up here for 57 minutes, exercising and stretching, and you've all been sitting there. Should we do wood thrushes?
Yes.
If anybody has to leave, you know you can get up and leave, and nobody will be insulted. But I should let every one of you stand up and stretch for 10 seconds. You want to stand up and stretch? Feels good, doesn't it? Is a wood thrush really worth waiting for? Your call. I see most of you sitting. I think we have to do wood thrushes. I have winter wrens lined up too, and my friend Kara, who I met just before the meeting, said, "What? You're doing wood thrushes and hermits and not veeries?" She was incensed. Kara, sorry. So let's do some wood thrushes. The favorite bird song of many. How many here? And the sad thing is that you really can't hear the magic of what these wood thrushes do. It goes back to our pathetic ears. They just can't capture the magic. We have a bit of a glimpse in the... Well, what is it that's magical about wood thrush songs? I suppose that's worth asking at the outset. You look at the beginning, you see these nice, pure tonal notes. They happen so quickly, it's pretty hard for us to capture. And then this ending, why, it just, to our ears, sounds, I emphasize, to our ears, it just sounds so percussive and sharp. And it's such a contrast between these nice tonal notes at the beginning and the percussive stuff at the end. And I'll play this once. And I'll play it again, but again, apologies to the wood thrush, because the wood thrush would never sing the same song in succession. I go to another song and play this one at normal speed. Again. And missing something, but that's okay. Because I wanted to slow this down to play it at half and quarter and 8 speed, because this at quarter speed is just priceless. I'll do that a little later. This ending is where the magical stuff happens. Our ears can almost hear the nice pure whistles in the beginning here, but the end happens so quickly that our ears just capture it. But as I said, That's where the magic happens in these wood thrush songs. And I'm going to take this last half and expand it in the next sonogram. These songbirds, all songbirds have two voice boxes. Not only do these birds have multiple songs from which to choose, and they can choose which to sing next and how many times to repeat something, they have these two voice boxes so they can sing a duet all by themselves. We have our voice box at the top of our windpipe, but if you follow that windpipe down, that windpipe splits in two bronchi, they go to the two lungs. At the top of each of those bronchi is a voice box, two separate, independently controlled voice boxes. So singing really becomes, precision breathing, ultra precision breathing, controlled by tiny little muscles, a dozen tiny little muscles that control these two little voice boxes, controlled by nerves that go up to the brain. You have all these little groups of neurons we call song control centers up in the brain. And it turns out about roughly 10 songbird species have been studied. The left voice box sings the low notes. The right voice box sings the high notes. Why? We don't know. But among the 10 that have been studied, it seems like all these songbirds agree. Left and right look alike. What's going on up here? What controls it? We just don't know. So the left voice box sings this whistle here and the lower notes that you see up down here. And what's up here is an exact frequency multiple of what's down here. When you hit middle A, 440 in the piano, you also get 440 times 2. You get the harmonic. Well, this is simply the harmonic of this lower voice. But then just imagine what all those tiny little muscles and the air flowing from the lungs through those two passageways have to do to create this song. The bird holds everything steady in that left voice box for a while, and then he stops and then starts vibrating down here. Well, as he's doing that, midway through this whistle, he starts to open the right side, and you see it becoming louder here, and he's gaining more air through that. It's becoming a little louder and darker in the sonogram. First, he tightens the muscles down so those membranes are tighter and they vibrate a little higher, and then he slackens those membranes, and the frequency gets a little lower, and then it's this beautiful series here. And recent studies have shown that the fastest twitching muscles known in all of vertebrates are where? The songbird voice box. You'd almost predict that given what goes on here. So these voice boxes are pretty magical little things. So with a little bit of hocus pocus, using an editing program, I can now play for us first the left voice box and then the right voice box. I can play them separately, and then you hear the two of them together after this. All of this slowed down so that you are the wood thrush, with the wood thrush's hearing ability slowed down to, I don't know, 1/6 or 1/8, I forget what the speed is. And why does he do this? She demands it. It's probably the simplest answer. These are perfectly synchronized. Suppose these were a little bit unsynchronized or a little bit off. She would hear that. And I'm convinced she would hear that as a clue to either his age. Young birds don't get these songs perfected. A friend published a paper many years ago. The title was Vocal Gymnastics in Wood Thrush Songs. And if you watch the Olympics, all of us are enamored with the Olympics, and especially with the speed and agility with which the smallest gymnasts can twirl that body and flip, and they're usually small Chinese, above-age gymnasts. But the number of routines that they have to go through to practice and practice and practice to get that perfect, I think the analogy here is just perfect. These wood thrushes have to go through that same kind of over and over and over routine to get it just perfect. And I think the females are listening for this kind of perfection. If it is not perfect, it probably says something about his age. Young birds take a while to get these songs down just right. Why would a female let a young bird father her offspring when there's an older, proven survivor singing perfect songs next door. Female might be listening for any hint that the male is not healthy. If he's not healthy, perhaps he can't sing this perfectly. If the male's not singing a perfect copy of the local dialect, it might tell her that, oh, he might be a bit of a vagrant. He has no proven history of being settled in this dialect. What kind of history am I gambling with here if I'm going to have him father my offspring? So I think there are all these clues for female in what the male is doing. To me, I'm no female wood thrush, but I think this looks pretty good. Here's another song. I'll play this one, normal speed. And again, this ending part just sounds percussive. Let's take a look at it. When we expand it, we start to see the detail. Here's this left lower voice box and the harmonic way up here. And look at the gymnastics in this right voice box. And just perfectly visually spaced between the fundamental and the harmonic. I don't think there's any reason it has to look this good. Does it look this good because it has to sound in a certain way? I don't know. But to me, it's visual art as well as auditory art. So again, we can play the left voice box first and then the right and the two together. He has 13 of these endings and about, I think it was 6 beginnings, and he arranges them in ways that are to make the next song totally unpredictable. Let me just play these beginnings and this sequence E, D, C, B, A, F, E, and C, and play them. I'm not sure. I think I miscounted there. The top 3 rows. And I'll play them at quarter speed. And what I do when I listen to a wood thrush, I like to think of every bird that sings as having some kind of handle that you can grab onto and listen to it and say, can I hear that again? Oh, there's something really unique. Let me listen to see when he comes back to that particular sound. And for me, the really unique beginning is F down here. It is so different from all the others that when we hear it at quarter speed, I think it'll just jump out at it. It's so different from the others. But even at normal speed, it will jump out at you. So let me play these beginnings at 1/4 speed because I think that they are especially beautiful at that speed. E, next D. C coming. B. There's the handle. So I'm going to back out of this PowerPoint. We're going to go back and try to bring a wood thrush to life using this other program. And this will be our finale. But if you want to come back at 7:30 tomorrow morning and get your fill, why, we'd be happy to see you. I lost them. Let me play with it here. There they come. So I'm going to start here at the beginning again. We're going to see these scroll by. When I listen to a wood thrush, the kind of thing I like to do, as I said, is I like to pick a handle. I like to pick a particular beginning, and then I start to count, and I ask, well, how soon does that same little particular recognizable element return? Well, I'm going to scroll through here, and you're not throwing us out, are you? Okay. I'm going to scroll through here, and we're going to look for that really odd ball, and we're going to listen for it. But when you get good enough, you'll start to recognize all 6 of these. And you'll start to do this with red-eyed vireos. You'll pick out a particular element, and it'll just haunt you because this red-eyed vireo will be singing all day long. Whenever he sings that particular element, you you kind of jar and say, well, there it is again, and there it is again, occurring about every 20 songs. You can't help yourself. So let's just scroll through this, and we're going to watch for that particularly different element. Tell me when you see it. There it is. There it is. We're going to play it at normal speed. Oh, we can play it over and over. We can play it backwards. Or we can how fast do you want to hear it? How about, well, okay, we got to move on. So we start counting. And so, all right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See it? There's the sixth one. We'll start counting again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. It's up to you. Let me hear you count. 1, 2, 3, 6. There it is again. So you start to see, well, there are patterns here. Let me try to understand the patterns as I listen to my favorite individual wood thrush. All right, so I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning. We should let the birds have the last say here. And this is just a natural sequence of this one particular wood thrush on this particular occasion. Trying to recognize others too, aren't you? Pick the easiest one first, and before you know it, you've got them all down. I should have let the birds have the last word, but I guess I need to say something. I guess all I would say is, when you make the ID, or even before you make the ID, don't slam the receiver down. And again, it's late. If you want to leave, nobody's insulted. So, yes. Sometimes I say things in a rather categorical fashion, like birds don't learn songs from their fathers. And then there's a whole lot more to it. If we took the time, we might say something. If I were going to elaborate on that, I would say, oh, those Buick's wrens that I studied, I think most young birds are with their fathers when they start to learn. And there's some evidence of this, lots of evidence of it, in fact, that they start to learn at that age. But once they pick up and move to that distant territory where they are going to settle down for the rest of their life, how relevant are Dad's songs? Well, they're irrelevant. But I think increasingly, a number of studies have shown that they're actually retained in memory, but they're not used over here at this new location, because the only songs that are important here are the ones that the bird uses to countersing and work with his neighbors at the new location. Absolutely. The young birds could be using what they've learned from their father as a guide to what they have to learn once they leave. So So yes, I could have been more careful and said, well, the songs that the young bird ends up with are those that eventually he develops over there. So yeah, there's a lot more going on. And there may be a couple of species where the young birds actually do learn from their fathers and retain it, like Galapagos finches.
I wanted to ask if you listen to the mockingbird. Now, he copies a lot of songs. I can't understand what he's saying. I don't recognize any of the songs that he's copying. That he's singing.
So mockingbirds mimic, but you're saying you personally aren't very good at being able to match the song with the model?
I'm not very good, but I can't recognize any song that he's singing that he's copying.
Well, you go out with some of the waterman expert birders, and they'll hang onto their arm and they'll point out, we got some good waterman birders here who know mockingbirds, right? And so join up on a field trip with these birders and they'll take care of you. Mockingbird we think of as an extraordinary mimic. I've got one that trumps that. If you had another 20 minutes, why, I'd play my favorite mimic in all of North America. And some of you know the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. It's this pristine oasis in southeastern Oregon where people go. It's just a bird mecca. I went there and I just became obsessed with this particular mimic there. You'd never guess what it was. Catbird. That's a good choice. Any other choices? Thrasher. Keep going. Starlings. One of the finest birds in all of North America once you learn how to listen to this creature. Extraordinary mimics. My favorite piece of the mimicry is where he's doing house sparrow and sandhill crane simultaneously. He's using his left voice box to do the lower sandhill crane and his right voice box to do the upper house sparrow. Two species, one of which we hold in disdain and the other of which we just worship, and the starling is just putting it to us, saying, take that! Over here? Yes.
How do the females learn the songs of the neighborhood? Or does she listen to the technical quality of a song? You know, is it a harmonic or is it just a sloppiness? What happens on that side of it? Because it's critical to her, the way you explained it, for her to judge something.
Yes. Superb questions. What happens on the female side of this? And half of us have been working in that in humans for all of our lives. It's so easy to study the male song. It's enormously difficult to try to understand what's in that female's mind as she makes her choice. I could give you just one example, and Kara, who's sitting here somewhere, probably in the overflow, could elaborate more because she's worked on this with chestnut-sided warblers. But the one study where I remember some of the details is Bruce Byers at the University of Massachusetts asked this very question about chestnut-sided warblers. He says, well, what's the female thinking? And then to answer, or begin to answer that question, here's what he had to do. He had to mark all the females in his study population. He had to mark all the males. He had to draw blood from all the males. He had to draw blood from all the babies. And then he had to ask which females are choosing males outside of the pair bond, and are some particular males favored more than others? And if so, is there anything about their songs that I can identify that she might use as a clue? And you can see the enormous amount of effort that Bruce had to go through to try to answer this very simple question. And if I remember correctly, he came up with two things. Those males that seem to be especially attractive to a number of females, they sing, what was it? There was something about the precision of their songs. They can, especially high repeatability, successive songs can be repeated with considerable precision. And I think they were also a little bit higher than average, too. So was the female using those particular clues? Well, it's a correlation. There's no cause and effect. If we could take a male and somehow alter his songs so that he sings especially high, and make him be a robot in precision, and then cause females to choose him, well, that'd be the kind of ideal experiment. And you can try to do some of these things in the laboratory, but nothing matches what the females, the decisions they have to make in the field. So there's an enormous amount we don't know about birdsong. One more, I'm told. Back here, I'm told.
Yes, all these birds are singing. How do they impact each other and what they sing?
Birds of different species or the same
Yes,
species?
different species.
Different
Birds are
species.
singing. Do birds of different species have an impact upon other species and what they sing?
There's some very simple ways that birds influence each other of other species, and in another 5 minutes I could show you a wonderful example here of how I had three singers. I had eastern towhee, a Carolina wren, and a white-eyed vireo. And during a 1 minute period, they were